Promotional consideration paid for by the following.
Hey everyone, Young Brian here. Do you like the mustache? 3 weeks in. Here in 98, my Saturday morning routine is me grabbing a big bowl of cereal and watching shows like Livewire and Jacked, Kai and Tai, The Job Squad, The Hardy Boys, I hope they stick around. But where you are in 2022, not only can you watch wrestling whenever you want on your computer, you can buy cereal from there too, like this week's sponsor, Magic Spoon. Take yourself back to Saturday mornings with some delicious grain-free cereal that isn't just good, it's good for you. I'm loving the fruity flavor more than anything right now. Check this out, Magic Spoon cereals contain 0 sugar and are packed with protein with only 4 net carbs at 140 calories per serving. Now that stuff doesn't matter much to teenagers with high metabolism like myself, but it's kind of important for the grown-ups, right, Current Me?
What? Yes, it's very, very important, yes.
Try their most popular flavors with a variety pack. Get it for $5 off if you use the code WREGRET or go to magicspoon.com/regret. Well, I'm gonna get some quality couch time while you sit back and watch this classic pay-per-view review of Starrcade 94. I haven't watched that far back yet. Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, as it happens, during the month of May, I found myself scheduling a lot of Hulk Hogan-centric videos. Hulkamania, if you will. Oh God, I hated that the second it left my mouth. But anyway, this week I decided to try and find what was the most Hulk Hogan-centric pay-per-view I could possibly come up with. And it had to be this one, folks. It's WCW Starrcade 1994, Triple Threat, from the Nashville Municipal Auditorium in Nashville, Tennessee, on a Tuesday, December 27th, 1994. This show was nominated by Adam Bodgis, Frosty Rabbit, and Daniel Howell over on patreon.com/wrestlingwithwregret. The show was given the subtitle Triple Threat because of the 3 build main events on this show, one of which is the opening matchup. This is widely considered to be one of the worst WCW pay-per-views ever, which is saying a lot because I have certainly seen a lot of them, but haven't seen this one yet, so why not? Let's dive in. Of course, one of the biggest stories in WCW at that time is the major coup of getting Macho Man Randy Savage into the fold. Savage has left the World Wrestling Federation and took his Slim Jim endorsement with him. He arrived in the December 3rd edition of Saturday Night and promised at Starrcade to either shake Hulk Hogan's hand or slap him in the face. 8,200 people showed up for Starrcade. About 130,000 pay-per-view buys gave this show a .65 buy rate. Tony Schiavone and Bobby Heenan on commentary, and of course Mean Gene Okerlund is there as well. Santa Claus is in the crowd. He is clearly Dave Sullivan, but shh, it's a secret for later. Aaron Tippin sings the national anthem. Now that's a mustache. And we're gonna kick off this pay-per-view in grand style with a pre-recorded segment of Bill Apter giving Hulk Hogan the PWI Wrestler of the Year award. Hulk has a very modest and humble acceptance speech. Then we go to our first of the 3 main events of the evening, your opening match for the US Championship as Hacksaw Jim Duggan defends against Vader. Duggan, of course, arrived at WCW at Fall Brawl, beating Steve Austin in dramatic, quick fashion for the US Championship and has held onto that belt ever since. This match in kayfabe is somewhat of a consolation prize for Vader because he did win the #1 contendership for the World Championship in the weeks leading up to this, but was leapfrogged for a title match by The Butcher. More on that match a little bit later. So Commissioner Nick Bockwinkel gave him this title match as a bit of a compromise, and they are building up the US Championship as kind of a de facto #1 contendership prize. The action starts with the brawl on the ramp. Vader's already lost his mask and the bell hasn't even rung yet. Duggan gets in the ring and beats up Harley Race and dumps him to the outside. Hacksaw on a big run as the match officially begins, able to knock Vader down with some clotheslines, and my God, the ease Duggan looks to have body slamming the big man. But why does Vader need to use rope breaks and eye pokes to get ahead? He's freaking Vader. Duggan uncharacteristically goes for a flying move but gets none of it. Vader takes over, gets his big body shots in, hits his bomb, but Duggan gets the ropes. He goes for it again, but Duggan takes him to Dick Kick City, followed by Tank Kick City. Nick Patrick doing nothing here. Race gets his stuff in with the ref turned away. Vader going for a moonsault, but he misses. Duggan makes his comeback with some clubbing blows, hits the 3-point stance, which doesn't seem any more impactful than the 9 other times he's hit Vader with a clothesline in this match. Race reaches in and thumbs Duggan in the eye to break the pin. Some USA chants for Duggan despite everyone in this match being from America. Nick Patrick is distracted as hell after the power slam that would have ended it. Duggan grabs the ref, flinches, ducks Vader's attack, pushed into Harley in the 2x4. Vader splats him to win the US Championship. I give this opening match 2 stars out of 5. My one real big problem with this match is, if you're trying to build Vader up as the next challenger for Hulk Hogan in the world title, why would you have him bumping his ass off for Duggan the way he did here? I think if the context or the stakes are a little bit different, I would probably not care so much about that. Or if the roles were reversed and Duggan took most of the heat in this thing, I think it would make a lot more sense. Vader getting beaten up most of the match and winning dirty was not very good for his presence, I would say. But again, in a bubble by itself, which you remove that outside context, the match itself was okay. Mean Gene's backstage with the 3 faces of fear: Kevin Sullivan, the Avalanche, and the Butcher. They're clutching a giant styrofoam tombstone that says Hulkamania, rest in agony. Butcher says the tombstone's a late Christmas present. Ha 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 ha. He has a very generic promo about how it's his night and Hogan's in for a fight, and there's going to be a party when he wins the title. My God, watching paint dry is more exciting than watching these uninspired Butcher promos. Avalanche tells Sting he's headed to the nearest emergency room, and that Sting will be finished when he hits the Avalanche. Sullivan rambles about how alliances have to be made to defeat the most powerful force in the universe, makes no mention of his opponent tonight. In our next matchup, a couple of young, unbeaten upstarts here as Das Wunderkind Alex Wright takes on Jean-Paul Levesque. Yes, it is Triple H's first and only WCW pay-per-view appearance as the snooty Frenchman Jean-Paul Levesque. Can we hear his French accent one time?
Bonjour, mon ami. Listen, at Starrcade 94,
the match begins with some sizing up. Wright is the faster of the two. He even leapfrogs the referee because he wants himself a piece of the cowardly heel. A long headlock by Levesque. Wright takes over the arm. You can hear a pin drop in this arena. Wright hitting his 3rd or 4th drop kick, and it's getting a diminishing return. Finally, JPL's had enough and gets to punching and stomping. Hits a spinning heel kick of all things. Alex Wright with the old Dustin Rhodes cut off when he goes to the crossbody but misses. Rolls to the outside. Back in the ring, Levesque with a power slam and a 2 count. Back to the long hold. Wright goes for a head scissors, but H catches him with a backbreaker, which gets the biggest crowd reaction in several minutes. Levesque with the worst top rope elbow I've ever seen, but Wright moves, makes a big white meat babyface comeback, and the crowd finally wakes up a little. We get a double down because that's what this match needed. Both men are back up. Wright flips out of the corner and rolls up Levesque to win. I give this match 2.5 stars out of 5, and in the words of George Carlin in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, well, they do get better. This was a fundamentally sound match, but holy crap, it was boring. Like I said, the audience was not into this thing, and I don't want to take the match away from the match because of the audience per se, but I think it does help. I think whether it was the placement of the match or just the fact that these two guys are still relative unknowns in the company and have this big pay-per-view platform here, I just don't think it worked. What a shock. Well, a tale as old as time, a Triple H match that goes several minutes longer than it probably should have. Then again, this was apparently the match that got him noticed by the WWF, and the rest is history. World Television Championship match up next as Johnny B. Bad defends against, well, it was meant to be the Honky Tonk Man, but that didn't quite happen that way, because after weeks and weeks and weeks of build between these two for a match at Starrcade, including a match at Clash of the Champions that saw Honky El Kabong Johnny and get himself DQ'd, and after weeks of Honky singing his own rip-off theme music twice because he's going over every show, and they play it to completion every time, and him on the promos ran, I gotta have a belt, Shabani. And then after all that, the day of the show at Starrcade, he finds out he's going to lose the match to Johnny, and he gets real uppity about it apparently, does not like this, wants to renegotiate his contract, and then on the spot, Eric Bischoff fires him. And every time I hear this story, I can't help but shake my head for him to not do it because he didn't want to lose to Johnny B. Bad, ends up losing his job as a result. Man, he really fumbled the bag. But despite all that, his music does still play for like 5 seconds, then it stops. Then we get his replacement, Arn Anderson, who wrestled in the dark match tonight. He's accompanied by Colonel Robert Parker and the man in a suit called Ming. As the match begins, we get a cool close-up of Ming's shades. Nice back and forth with both guys to start off. Arn at one point complaining that Bad grabbed him by the hair, which got a pop out of me. Bad blocks the atomic drop but walks right into the old spine buster. Double A working over BA Double D for a while. We get the Aloha Arn for a moment before he's back on top. Bad making his comeback, goes up top, a super sunset flip and a 2 count. Arn blocking another one, tries to win dirty. The referee catches him. Johnny rolls up Arn to win and retain. I'm going to give this one 3 stars out of 5. It is a fairly basic match, and the whole vibe just has this whole body language of we are calling this in the ring right now because it's such a last-minute deal. But because it feels so, it feels so effortless, and because it goes off relatively well, it doesn't look like there's any botches that I can pick up here, it's a pretty darn good match, all things considered. And even in this last minute, we got to put something together right now kind of feel, still a lot better than anything I think Johnny B. Bad and Honky would have had. We got another PWI Awards highlight as the Nasty Boys are the tag team of the year. Up next, they take on Harlem Heat with Sister Sherry in their corner. Back in November, Sensual Sherry was revealed to be the person on the other side of the phone because Harlem Heat would keep getting these phone calls, and they would the mystery voice would tell them what to do, and they would do that person's bidding. We find out it's Sister Sherry here. Sherry's definitely been getting involved in this feud with Harlem Heat and the Nasty Boys, slapping the Nasty Boys, spraying them with her hairspray. A big grudge match here that also has major tag title ranking implications. The Nasties look strong early on. They fight their way to the outside and brawl there for a while. Stevie Ray clubbing Knobs from behind while Sherry has the ref's back turned. The Heat take over for a moment, but Knobs and Sags back on top. Working Booker's arm for a while, but a Stevie Ray cheap shot causes things to fall apart. Stevie on the outside dropping Sags into the barricade outside. Harlem Heat picking apart Jerry for several minutes. Stevie and Booker taking turns with the bear hug. Finally, Sags the double DDT and gets the hot tag to Knobs. The comeback is cut off. Sherry grabs that can of hairspray again, but she hits the wrong guy. Sags hitting the top rope elbow, but then Sherry gets up top herself. She dives, but hits her own man again. The match ends on a disqualification, but the Nasties grab Sherry and take her to Pity City. I'm going to give this one 3.5 stars out of 5. This is probably the best match of the night, which sadly isn't saying much, and probably the only time you'll hear me say that about a Nasty Boys match. I liked the heat and the aggression that these two teams had. I liked the story. It really felt like a war in there. It wasn't always pretty. It may have gone a little bit too long at times, but I think it was still all right in the grand scheme of things. And Sherry getting her comeuppance right away after the bell does take the sting off that DQ loss. Sting wins PWI's Most Popular Wrestler Award, but considering it's all fan voted, I'm not sure what the difference between that and Wrestler of the Year are. Dig those shades, by the way. Mean Gene is backstage with the Stinger. What are his thoughts on the Avalanche? Sting putting over the little stingers he looked to for support, says he's going to walk away either a loser or a giant killer, and he feels like the latter. All right, gotta get myself pumped up for this next match. All right, here we go. Kevin Sullivan versus Mr. T. At Clash of the Champions, Kevin Sullivan got into it with referee Mr. T and blasted him with Jimmy Hart's megaphone. That's pretty much all the build that went into this one, and the announcers certainly aren't explaining it any better. And it's not as if Mr. T is a relevant, popular star at the moment. He's not really doing anything right now. The A-Team's over, the Rocky movies are over. It'll be years before you see him in a 1-800-COLLECT commercial. The only reason he's here, and that's kind of the theme you'll see throughout this show, only reason he's here is because he's Hulk Hogan's friend. Mr. T is wearing a referee shirt despite not being a referee in this matchup, and he's wearing one of those old-timey nightcaps to match. No joke, when I was a kid, I really wanted one of those long nightcaps that you would see in the old Looney Tunes cartoons. So like 9-year-old me watching this might have been a bit jealous. T begins by throwing his weight around, hits a hip toss and some really bad-looking punches. Santa Claus appears, he has a sack full of t-shirts. Sullivan blatantly giving T the Iggy like, come on man, I can't tell which one of them is making those "oh" noises with all those punches.
This is where Kevin doesn't.
T doesn't know what to do, looks totally hesitant and lost and nervous in there. He gets dumped to the outside. Sullivan is beating the hell out of T at this point. The poor cameraman goes down and T falls on top of him. Why did we get a shot of Kevin Sullivan's taint? This is not a porno shoot. Mr. T is then trapped in his shirt. He can't get his hands through the sleeves. Looks like he's got mittens. It's hilarious and adorable and all sorts of bullshit. Jimmy Hart shows up all of a sudden. He slips Santa the megaphone. Now the announcers finally realize it's Dave Sullivan. And after a very drawn out and badly blocked moment, Dave hits Kevin with the loaded sack. Mr. T covers and wins. Well, this match went 3 minutes and 50 seconds long, so I'm going to give it negative 3.5 stars. What an absolute shit show this thing was. And don't get me wrong, it was hysterical, but I'm pretty sure that was not the vibe they were going for with this one. You know, and as bad as the main event's going to be later on, it's got nothing on this thing. The only thing that's redeeming about this match to me, though, is Mr. T's adorable referee mittens. Then after the bell, Kevin beats the hell out of his childlike and innocent brother and hits the pile pile driver. Merry Christmas, everyone. Mean Gene is backstage with the Hulkster and Jimmy Hart. How about the Butcher? How about the Macho Man? Hogan says he is disappointed in the Butcher, who's been clouded by the desire for money and fame, says they're going to take out the cancer that is the three faces of fear. On the Macho Man, quote, shooting with the whole world, he talks about the personal differences with he and Savage, and that if he crosses the line, he will end up just like the Butcher. Hart tells Gene to get on the Hulkamania bandwagon and says he'll always stand by Hogan's side. Well, we'll see about that. In your second of three main events, Sting takes on the Avalanche. These guys have been warring for several months, and they're not nearly done yet. They have a few months left to go in their timeline here, so this is kind of a nice midpoint match in their feud after several encounters they've had where nothing's been concluded. Some taunting between both men to start things off, shoving back and forth. Avalanche gets the advantage early on, just throwing his weight around with him. Sting has some flurries of offense to break up the action, but the flow does get stunted here. Goes to the slam but can't get him up. Lanch slams him instead and is back on the attack. More drops, more slams, stepping on Sting. Sting starts to fight back, gets the shots in, then kicks Lanch right in the ball. He is no longer selling and just powder so he can catch his breath for a minute. Ouch. Avalanche recovers. It's a big old power slam. We get a kick out. Sting has some fight left in him, jumps on Lanch's back for a sleeper. You know, we have seen a lot of ineffective sleepers on this show tonight, which is unfortunate since your main event heel's finish and what they've been building the entire match around is a sleeper. Another power slam. Lanch calling for the big sit, but he takes too much time. Sting starts to come back. The ref gets pinned to the corner as Sting hits his splash, and the ref is smooshed. Sting with the slam and the attempt at a Scorpion Deathlock, but Kevin Sullivan comes in. Avalanche is disqualified. The Faces of Fear with the beatdown until Hulk Hogan makes the save, even though we're going to see him again in like 5 minutes. I give it 1.5 stars. This was not the best match either of them could have had. It was pretty slow stuff, and I think for it to end on a DQ after everything we've seen so far in this show so far is not great. I will say, though, that for what they did do in the ring, I thought they told a pretty decent story, even though Avalanche not moving quite as fast as he was in the World Wrestling Federation as Earthquake. Jimmy Hart wins the PWI Manager of the Year award for the first time since 1987. Now it's time for your main event, and folks, I am just chuffed and jazzed and ready to go. Just thinking about this one, folks. Woohoo, the goosebumps are aplenty as Hulk Hogan defends the WCW Championship against his former best friend, the Butcher, aka Brutus Beefcake. At Clash of the Champions 28, a masked man bludgeoned Hogan's knee with a lead pipe. Who could have done it? Well, after weeks of guessing and accusations and misdirections, at Halloween Havoc, the world finally discovered it was Brother Brutai himself, Hogan's longtime best friend in the business, who kept the ruse going on for months. He would hang out with Hogan when the assailant just happened to not be there, now aligning with the Three Faces of Fear to fight Hogan for the title. Ed Leslie, of course, under his 7th or 8th gimmick as the Butcher. So what makes him the Butcher? What makes the Butcher such a definable gimmick? Well, he wears big sunglasses every time he cuts a promo. Oh, and he makes a lot of silly faces. Then at Clash 29, Butcher gets his sleeper hold locked in on Hogan for a long time, and now they're really building the sleeper up as this killer hold. The Butcher, he's got no charisma, no look, and no business being in this main event picture. Now look, I am not totally against friends helping friends in the wrestling business. I think that's a natural consequence when you're on the road with a bunch of guys and you become friends with people, you eventually work with them, and you want to make each other look good. I get all that, and I get, maybe pulling in a favor for a friend to have him in a nice match like this. But it's not as if Brutus was some really hard-working workhorse who was really good and just underutilized or underrated. Like, he had a ceiling as to where he could go. And I think if you're going to be friends helping friends out in a wrestling match or something, you got to be of a somewhat equal plane and workmanship. And for all his faults, Hulk Hogan on his worst day is a far better worker and performer than the Beefer ever was. They both get their intros, Michael Buffer does the introductions, then Hogan's music plays again, and there's more pyro on top of what he already got. Why? What's the Butcher's 2 biggest pieces of offense? Facial expressions and back rakes. He's got those in spades. Hogan doing his best job selling for his friend like he was Andre. Tony Schiavone describing this as Butcher at his best. Butcher chokes Hogan with a microphone cord on the outside. A whole lot more back rakes. Goes for a chair, but Jimmy Hart runs interference. Butcher with a lot more goofy ass selling as Hogan comes back, bashing Butcher in the back with a chair, then in the head. Did anyone say this match was no DQ, by the way? Heenan doing his best on commentary, and throughout the whole build to this, he's done this. He's done a really good job trying to build Butcher's years-long resentment toward Hogan, how it festered inside him and led to this big betrayal. He's been the bit player for so long, and now he's finally gonna leapfrog his best friend and everything. But the body language and the promos and everything Butcher's had to do on his end just does not match the motivation Heenan is desperately trying to sell here in this match. A power slam, Butcher goes to the second rope, rope, goes for an elbow, but Hogan moves and starts to come back. These guys look like they're play fighting to a ridiculous degree at this point. Big arm moves by the Butcher here. Butcher comes back with a forearm and applies a shoulder claw, gets Hogan in the dreaded sleeper. Things look dire for Hulkamania. The arm goes down 3 times, very obviously so, until it doesn't, I guess. He's playing possum. Butcher thinks he's won for a second, but decides to go for a pin anyway, but Hogan kicks out and hulks up. Kevin Sullivan and the Avalanche show back up. Hogan fights them all off. The leg drop, Sullivan waiting politely for Hogan to get the 3 count, and the match is over. As the old saying goes, fuck this match and everyone involved, 0 stars. After the bell, Hogan facing off with the Faces of Fear, then the Macho Man Randy Savage making his long-awaited appearance. Will it be 4-on-1? Turns out no, as Hogan and the Macho Man work together to take out the 3 Faces of Fear. So will Savage shake Hogan's hand or slap him in the face? He shakes the hand. The former Mega Powers pose. We get some post-show stuff in the locker room in which Savage immediately takes his place in the background, sets up Hogan's next program against Vader for Super Brawl, and that's the show. My grade for Starrcade 94, Triple Threat, is a D-. Believe the hype, folks, this is a pretty darn bad show like everyone says it is. Very few redeeming qualities. The matches that weren't god-awful weren't great either. Lots of unintentional hilarity with Mr. T and Kevin Sullivan, even though it was such a shit show besides that. And the main event was simply garbage. And really, it's kind of the worst of what Hogan could do politically. Like, match this up with like him union busting in the WWF in the 80s, and I'm trying to figure out which one is actually worse on some level, but they're both pretty darn bad. Arn and Johnny B. Bad, though, they made the best of a bad situation. They had a pretty darn good match, and the tag match was fine, and the best thing of all, I'm done talking about it. Well, we're almost, but not quite done looking at Hulk Hogan in the month of May, but stay tuned because in June, we're looking back at some classic ECW moments, beginning with the next classic review I'm doing. I'm talking about Heat Wave 1999. I'm Brian Zane, and I'll see you next time.